a Noble Media Group member.
The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life.
6,000 years ago, man invented the
wheel. Do you want the title?
5,000 years later, he invented the printing press. 460 years later, he would fly. 70 years later, he would step on the moon. And 8 years later, he would send a spacecraft beyond our solar system. Today, we have computers which can think for themselves and robots that can dance. Properly utilized, today's technologies can bring an end to poverty, hunger, and even the need to work, or to make bombs that will end all life on Earth. Will we destroy ourselves or come together?
It is now 85 seconds to midnight. This is the closest the world has ever been to midnight.
Join Joe Carvin as he explores these questions, because mankind is on the hinge of history. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hinge of History. This is Brian Mistro. I'm here with my friend Joe Carvin. Joe, it's good to see you. You've got a little bit of a different backdrop there today.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking, Brian. Yeah, I'm wearing my special Raw 60 shirt. I'm in Fort Marmi, Italy, celebrating my wife's 60th birthday. So I'm coming to you from Italy today, and I've got my special Raw 60 shirt. So just a big shout out to my wife and her 60th birthday.
Well, tell her we wish her a very, very happy birthday from me and everybody else involved in the group. So, and I hope that you're going to get out and do some fun stuff tonight. So.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna do that. But before we do that, we might depress everybody because today we're going to talk about some of the risks associated with AI. And ultimately, we want to remind you why we call this podcast the Hinge of History. In recent weeks, we've been working hard to help people understand the technological potential to create a post-scarcity world of high universal income, a world without poverty, hunger, disease, and even the need to work. In our view, dramatic advances in AI, robotics, and quantum computing have made it crystal clear to all that are willing to look, humanity now has the technological capacity to create a world of superabundance. However, we also want to be quick to acknowledge that AI brings with it a whole new set of risks that will be particularly difficult to manage given the speed with which AI is being unleashed in our world. In today's podcast, we're going to more fully explain the Fermi paradox and the great filter theory, both of which are super easy to understand and unfortunately truly terrifying. Before we discuss these theories, Brian, I'd like to listen to that first video we have teed up to give you a sense of how big our universe really is.
You got it. I'll put it on right now. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most unsettling mysteries in all of science. There are 200 billion trillion stars in the observable universe. Most of them have planets. Billions of those planets sit in the habitable zone where liquid water could exist. Billions more have the right size, the right chemistry, the right conditions for life to emerge. The universe has had 13.8 billion years for that life to evolve, to develop intelligence, to build civilizations. Yet, when we point our most advanced instruments toward the cosmos and listen, we hear nothing. No radio transmissions. No signs of engineering on cosmic scales. No evidence of intelligence anywhere except right here on Earth. Complete silence. And by the end of tonight, you're going to understand why this silence might be the most terrifying discovery in human history.
Well, it's hard to even think at that kind of a scale with that many planets. And I don't think, Joe, that most people can process that, right. that kind of size. And so I'll hand it back over to you, but yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, look, I think the thing is, look, for those of us look for meaning in life, those of us really trying to understand the rationale for the universe, Sometimes I wonder if it's so big, and that's just the observable universe. I wonder if it's so big that we're not meant to understand it.
Mm,
The reason I mention this is because we want to talk about the Fermi paradox. We just heard that the observable universe is 13.8 billion years old and now extends to include 200 billion trillion stars, most of which have their own planets orbiting them.
yeah.
And the Fermi paradox, as I said, is rather simple. Apparently, the famous Italian scientist came back from lunch one day and said, "Hey, where is everyone? If the universe is 13.8 billion years old, other
Hmm.
civilizations will have much more than enough time to develop and become spacefaring and multiplanetary. And with the extraordinary new telescopes we have been using, we can now see farther and farther into the observable universe. We can also speculate fairly accurately there are 200 billion stars in the known universe, each more likely than not to have 200 billion trillion stars, each more likely not to have planets circling them. Based on these numbers, Fermi wondered how it is we have not come across any other life forms or distant civilizations. Now, one theory that's been put forward to explain this deafening silence is the second thing we're going to talk about today, and that's the great filter theory. Most people haven't heard about the great filter theory, but the theory basically says it proposes a resolution to the Fermi paradox. And Dr. Robin Hanson, I said I'd get the name, an economist argued that somewhere along the evolutionary timeline, from raw dead matter to an advanced spacefaring civilization, there exists a developmental barrier, a filter that is so extraordinarily difficult to cross that it halts nearly all life before it can colonize space.
Hmm.
This filter consists of one or more critical evolutionary steps. Now, the filter that I'm concerned about first came to me in a op-ed that was shared to me in December 2011. It fundamentally changed my thinking about the world and my understanding of the world. It was an op-ed by Charles Krauthammer where he talked about new planets having been discovered. But again, why the silence? He talked about the Fermi paradox. And he said Carl Sagan, among others, thought that the answer is to be found tragically in the final variable, the high probability that advanced civilizations destroy themselves.
Mm,
I said to myself, Brian, we're advancing technologically. This is December 2011, 15 years ago.
right.
Now the speed is accelerated. It's going faster and faster every second. And ultimately, at the same time, the Bulletin of Atomic Sciences have been increasing the risks that they believe, the objective analysis, that we're getting closer and closer to self-extinction. So first of all, what do you think of this concept? What do you think of this idea of the great filter theory, and that as civilizations advance in technological capacity, they destroy themselves?
You know, I find it extremely hard on one side to believe that we're alone in the universe. I'm sorry, I do. I think it
Yeah.
would be
Yep.
extraordinarily small. But on the other side, from a science guy, I mean, that's what I came out of. There's no evidence to conclude that there is anything, at least in what we would consider advanced intelligence, anywhere, and that doesn't make any sense unless there
No.
is nobody out there.
Oh,
So,
so but both can be true. The life could be teeming, the universe can be teeming with life,
mhm,
but it never advances far enough where they can become spacefaring and multiplanetary.
yeah,
In fact, we were just listening this morning. We'll find out. We'll look at it more. There's been a new study that talks about the abundance of life in the universe. But the two could be true. There could be an abundance of life. We've just never seen them,
hmm,
and for a whole host of reasons. But one of which certainly scares me to death. And that Krauthammer essay is really what sent me on my search and to look at existential risk, right?
mm,
Because we're clearly living at one of the most consequential times in human history. And that's what ultimately, Brian, gives the name of this show, right?
that's
So
right.
we're living at the hinge of history. And what I did, we looked at these long-termist philosophers who ultimately say, you know what? Those people yet to be born, they have no voice in today's world. So not only do we have increased responsibility, those of us alive, to preserve humanity for future generations, if indeed we're the only civilization that sufficiently that has that potential advance to become multiplanetary we should take advantage of it. So
Yeah.
ultimately, the name of the show comes from a Oxford professor, Derek Parfit, who wrote in the final pages on what matters. And I'm going to give two quotes of his. The
Okay.
first is, we live during the hinge of history. Given the scientific and technological discoveries of the last 2 centuries, the net world has never changed as fast. He wrote this in 2011. We shall soon have greater powers to transform not only our surroundings, but ourselves and our successors. If we act wisely in the next few centuries, humanity will survive its most dangerous, decisive period. I don't think it's the next few centuries anymore. I think it's the next few decades.
I do too. Yeah, I
And
do too.
again, he said the same thing again in 2015. I think we're living now at the most critical part of human history. The 20th century, I think, was the best and worst of all centuries so far, but it now seems fairly likely there are no intelligent beings anywhere else in the observable universe. Not that we see it anyway. Now, if that's true, we may be living in the most critical part of the history of the universe.
Yeah.
Why this? But and ultimately, it may be only us who might provide the origin of what can then become a galaxy-wide civilization, which lasted for billions of years, in which life was much better than it was for most humans. If you look at the scale there is between human history so far and what it could become, it's enormous. And what's critical, Derek Parfit said, we could blow it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Literally. No
how
no pun
stupid can we
intended.
be? No pun intended.
No pun
How
intended.
how stupid are we? I mean, again, let me ask you this. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the gobbledygookers and the political BS. Who's talking about the existential threats to humanity or any of the serious minded people talk this guy, that guy?
No.
We talked last show, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, they talked about how we're going to use AI to improve military capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
$2.7 trillion a year we spend every year to destroy each other. We will not survive this century. We will not. Sir Martin Rees, we talked. We will not survive this century if we maintain the current mentality. We need to fundamentally transform to a Renaissance mindset. And I just said Carl Sagan was one of the pundits that said, it may be that this great filter theory as civilizations advance in
Yeah.
technology. And he said, clearly we have problems with scientific industrial advancements. You bet, but the fundamental problem is we haven't developed a wisdom commensurate with our technology.
Yeah.
That's the thesis of the show. We
Yeah.
Homo technologicus is genius. Homo sapiens, pure stupidity. But I told you as we started to warm up, one of my, increasingly big heroes is Elon Musk. And we'll talk about the whole space economy in future shows, which he just did a big talk on yesterday. But ultimately, I would argue that no one understands the nature of the threat better than Elon Musk. So when the gobbledygooks, oh, billionaire, a trillionaire, the first trillionaire ever, all the gobbledygooks, all the naysayers, all the other, as we say in Spanish, malas lenguas, all the malas lenguas, all the bad tongues, all they do is carp and criticize. First trillionaire. What they didn't talk about is the fact that humanity gave them $85 billion to help us become a multiplanetary species. But what did anybody look at the mission statement in the 160-page prospectus for SpaceX? You know what that mission statement is? Our mission is to build the systems and technologies necessary to make life multiplanetary, thus understand the true nature of the universe, and to extend the light of consciousness to the stars. What did I say? To extend the light of consciousness to the stars. Now, this is not the first time Elon's spoken this way. Let me give you some other quotes. At the World Economic Forum in January this year, the bottom line is we need to assume that life and consciousness is extremely rare, and it might only be us. And if that's the case, then we need to do everything possible to ensure the light of consciousness is not extinguished. Because effectively, the image in my mind is of a tiny candle in a vast darkness, tiny candle of consciousness that could easily go out.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry. Again, I am terribly concerned that human stupidity will extinguish this light of consciousness. But again, it's just sort of poetic. And I'd like to just a couple more of his quotes if I could. This is on the Joe Rogan Experience. We should do everything possible to ensure this tiny candle of consciousness does not go out. Life on Earth hasn't been around very long, and it can easily disappear. Clearly, we need to extend life beyond Earth and become a multi-planetary species. Another public statement. Starship is the key to making life multiplanetary and to protecting the light of consciousness. And finally, my plan is this is way back in 2021. My plan is to use the money for SpaceX to get humanity to Mars and preserve the light of consciousness. Look, he talks about the dead civilizations. When we get out there, we're going to find these dead civilizations. Look, we cannot make this mistake. We should have the number one goal of K-12 education, university education, and every education across the world, human survival. Human survival.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about abundance and what we can achieve. Let's survive first and foremost. Let's really begin to reach out to our brothers and sisters across the world. I told you I'm going to commit right here on this show. I'm going to learn Chinese. The most important relationship in the world right now is between China and the United States. I'm going to go learn Chinese, and I'll do everything in my power to bring the Chinese people and American people together. And I can tell you, we've been working in China on our not-for-profit educational program for 15 years. You know what? You know how they teach your kids? They said, I want you to teach your kids with a loving heart. The biggest challenge I had in China is the hospitality I've been shown. So on a people-to-people level, we got to get the politicians out of the way, get them all. And now I want you to do that second video because I think he talks to the politicians. And this is
Yeah.
Brian Cox, one of the top scientific researchers, pundits. He's a great scientific scholar. Let's listen to what he has to say.
Let's do it.
It's possible that we're the only civilization in the Milky Way galaxy at the moment. Right? It's worth considering that might be the case. And there are reasons we can go into about why that may be the case. So if it's true, imagine it's true, I think that if we're talking about the meaning of it all, well, meaning is a property of intelligence, I think. So clearly the universe means something to us. So meaning exists here. But if there's no other intelligence out there in our galaxy and we destroy ourselves, then we might eliminate meaning in a galaxy of 400 billion stars forever. That's what we might do. So consider that, world leaders. You have potentially a galactic size responsibility to maintain meaning in a galaxy. It's possible.
Galactic size responsibility to maintain meaning in the galaxy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and so again, so that's obviously that's our mission here with this podcast. That's my mission in life is to, use my 71 years of experience. I loved your last show when you talked about simple things like you did with in your neighborhood, bringing people across the neighborhood together. That's my challenge to everybody watching this podcast is what can you do? What are you going to do to make life and your community a bit stronger, a bit more loving, a bit more connected, across your community, across communities across the world? What can we do to keep this dim light of consciousness aware and alive?
Yeah. Yeah. And people, it's funny. We get all tied up. And this isn't a political statement at all, but we get all tied up in politics that are happening around the world, what's happening in Washington, D.C., when the reality is, Joe, it's the politics and the people that are local and that are around us, be it our neighborhood or, this part of our town or whatever. And that's where you'll find the real difference. And that's where the real, one of the real big impacts can be made. So I'm with you. All the gobbledygook, as you call it, with the politicians, it just, oh my gosh, we need to go back and remember what's important, right?
And again, and so look, I mean, I think, as I said, I think K-12 educators have an essential role to play here. I was listening to a podcast with Peter Diamandis and this morning, and education needs to change.
Hmm.
You know, multinational corporations. We've talked about this in the past. I remember back that Raymond Vernon, a Harvard professor, wrote the first book on the MNCs, multinational corporations, back in what, geez, I had to be when I was like in the 70s.
Hmm.
And now there's over 110,000. So what nationality is IBM? What nationality is Google?
Mm.
They have and again, don't get me started on the ESG movement. Well, it's all, fortunately, it became, again, it became a, what do you call it, value showing, what's the word?
Right,
Virtue
right.
signaling exercise. Well, for me, it was easy. Start with E, existential risk. What have you done this year to reduce the existential risk of humanity? Let's
Mm,
start right there.
mm,
That's what the E should be for. And again, I talk about Bill Gates being one fourth correct. So Bill Gates wrote a fantastic book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. We should all be doing everything we can to preserve our planet and reduce, the negative impacts of climate change. Absolutely. He
yeah.
wrote a terrific book. And he was interviewed by CNN, and the interviewer asked him, he said, look, we've got to go from 53 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions to zero by 2050. He says, that sounds impossible. And Bill Gates said, it's not impossible. It's not easy. It's not impossible. It's possible, but it will be the greatest thing humankind's ever done.
Mm.
I asked my students, why is he only one fourth correct? Well, climate change is not the only existential risk or
Oh,
civilizational risk. There's at least three: nuclear, and 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 um, and obviously AI. And fourth, we have potential for superabundance. So that would, the greatest thing humankind could ever do would come together to create this world of abundance that we now know is achievable and possible. That would be the greatest thing humankind's ever done. So he's close,
right.
but we need to widen the conversation. That's, again, we want to widen the conversation. There are three civilizational risks, if you want, and when we can look at those, but ultimately, and again, one of my favorite thought leaders is Yuval Noah Harari, who explained at his first, he just joined the Center for Existential Risk, the study of existential risk at Cambridge University. He joined them about 2 years ago. At his inaugural address, he said, we face three existential risks, right? AI, climate change, and nuclear war. And he said, however, the solution is the same. He
Mm,
said, we can solve climate change if we come together. We can solve AI if we come together and work together. But again, one, if we go to war, that's the last war we'll ever have. And two, if we're warring, there's no way you solve climate change and AI.
mm-mm. Yeah.
And that's, again, it's the same theme over and over and over again. And I don't know, Brian. I think that well, and we met through my he met through my political consultant when I ran for Congress in 2012. Remember, my good friend Bill, we have a mutual good friend, Bill
We do.
O'Reilly.
We do.
And and um and Bill heard all the stuff in 2012. And I kind of sometimes feel like I'm a lone wolf out there. I was telling you before the show, we're celebrating my wife's 60th. We got the whole family here. I can't get my nephews or nieces or kids to pay attention to superabundance or the existential risk. So sometimes I feel like we're a lone wolf out there, but I can't thank you enough for providing the opportunity to do this show. And ultimately, I am beginning to become more and more comfortable and hopeful that we can begin to talk more about the infinite economy, the end of scarcity, and because now at least we have a real bright light at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
We're really talking about existential risk is kind of Debbie Downer.
Yeah, it is.
And as you know, we've been talking about superabundance. Now, some people don't want superabundance. That's a whole nother thing, right? Because your life meaning is ultimately all tied up with who you are and what you do. But as we said in the last show, neither one of you are going to give up the podcast in superabundance. When we're gazillionaires, we'll still do the podcast.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes. I want to throw out
Right.
one question to you,
Please.
and it's connected to AI, and in some ways it's not. You said, which I agree with, one of the most important things is for humanity to come together. In that one world vision. What do you think is the biggest um, blockade? What do you think is the biggest thing that's stopping that from happening?
In all honesty, it's mindset. It really is this mindset, perspective and mindset. Again, first of all, every educational system is nation state. There's
Hmm.
no right. So if you're a politician, right, you're beholden to your community.
Yeah.
So there's not an educational system in the world that's globalized. So now you need people within those nation states to globalize. And what's happened is Kwame Appiah wrote a great book called Cosmopolitanism, and technologies provide us the opportunity to come together and have conversations like never before. But no one's telling us how to get along.
Hmm.
I mean, so at the end of the day, it's the same thesis, whether it's one world or whoever does it. We just need to understand that we share a common fate on a crowded planet.
Hmm.
And again, that whole process accelerated. Now, my hope, I'm still hopeful President Xi and President Trump can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've said it. One thing about President Trump, he's always said, my good friend, President Xi. He went to China and visited in April.
Yeah.
President Xi's coming back this year. And by the time I'm fluent in Chinese, maybe, oh, fingers crossed, I'm going to be trying, this time next year, I'll be conversing in Chinese, not fluent. I will be this time next year, Brian, hold me to the gun, all the whole audience. I want, okay, Joe, and let's see when I'm talking in Chinese, let's see what if we can build our Chinese audience.
That'd work. Maybe we can even get Xi on our show. What do you think?
Yep. Yep. Well, in fact, actually, since the show today is talking about risks, if I have one more minute, the two most horrific moments in human history were the Holocaust and the Nanjing Massacre. And two horrific events. And I'm trying to get the two museums together.
Hmm.
We talk about never again, but it's a lot of crap. Let's see if we can't get. It's okay. Thank you for reminding me. I'm going to get the Nanjing Museum and the Holocaust Museum in Rockland County, New York. Dr. Mark Bach, Dr. Mark Bach, Superintendent Clarkstown. We're going to make this happen. I'm going to send the show to him as soon as it's published. Mark, we need to make that happen. We've given an award to the top educator, Madam Lin in China. We're going to make this happen. We've been talking about it for a number of years. We're going to make it happen. We're going to get the survivors, and just we got to eliminate those horrific moments and stains in our history.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Well, everyone, I know we ran just a little bit late today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. I don't know where you're watching this from, be it X or if it's on YouTube or Twitch or any other social media site. If you go to YouTube, just look us up at No Bull Media Group. You can subscribe to this show. You can subscribe to many of the others that we've gotten. And that are running right now. And if you're on X, give us a follow, ask a question. Same thing with Twitch. Just drop a question. We'll get back to you. I mean, we'll talk about it on air. Joe and I love that. I mean, we love kind of reaching out and talking about things and answering some questions. So please do that for us. We hope you're still enjoying the show. And I believe, Joe, we will see you again Monday. Is that correct? All right.
Yep.
Have a wonderful, wonderful trip, my friend. Enjoy your wife's 60th birthday. Again, a happy birthday from all of us and everyone that's watching this. Thank you, and we'll see you again on Monday.
Thank you, Brian.
You've been watching Joe Carvin's Hinge of History. The No Bull Media Group is available on all major social media platforms. Make sure to give us a follow where you can watch this show and many others.
A No Bull Media Group member.